For much of the late 20th century, a series of legal decisions permitted the execution of juvenile offenders, even when their crimes, as tragic as they were, occurred during adolescence. Society was divided. On one side were those who argued that heinous crimes warranted equally harsh punishment, regardless of age. On the other, human rights advocates and legal scholars questioned whether a young mind, still developing and influenced by circumstance, could ever be held fully accountable for its actions. These debates became even more personal when the final moments of these condemned youths were documented for posterity. Their last meals, their final words, and the unmistakable air of tragedy that enveloped the execution chamber. Let us now examine several cases that have come to symbolize this unresolved conflict.
The Amarillo home of David and Sarah Lawrence between the hours of 9:30 and 11:30 p.m. where he murdered, mutilated, and RPD Sarah with a large Bowie knife found in the master bedroom.
In 1979, 17-year-old J. Kelly Pinkerton committed 2 brutal murders in Amarillo, Texas. His first crime involved breaking into the home of Sarah Dawn Lawrence, where he stabbed her multiple times before stealing valuables. A year later, he struck again, fatally stabbing Sher Will, an employee at a furniture store. Arrested in 1981 after police discovered his fingerprints at the crime scenes, Pinkerton's trial progressed quickly, resulting in a death sentence from the jury. On May 15, 1986, Pinkerton entered the execution chamber in Texas. His final meal was simple, a source of comfort in his last hours, consisting of 2 cheeseburgers, French fries, and a soda. Moments before the lethal injection, he reached out with a message of solace. "Be strong for me. I want you to know that I'm at peace with myself and with my God." In a moment that combined remorse with religious fervor, he began to sing a hymn. "I bear witness to Allah, I ask for your forgiveness." At 12:25 a.m., the state declared him dead, a quiet end to a tumultuous life.
Okay, well, my name is Sean Sellers. Who are you?
The case of Sean Sellers sent shockwaves through the city of Oklahoma. At just 16, Sellers committed a double murder, taking the lives of his own parents, Vaughn and Lee Bellato, while they slept, and a year earlier, he had killed Robert Paul Bauer at a convenience store. Although his actions were later attributed in part to his fascination with Satanism, a belief he claimed made him possessed by a demon named Ezurate, the courtroom remained unmoved. Even after renouncing Satanism and converting to Christianity, Sellers' fate was already sealed. On February 4, 1999, at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary, Sellers was taken to the execution chamber. His final meal was a culturally significant choice: Chinese food that included egg rolls, sweet and sour shrimp, and fried shrimp, a meal that starkly contrasted with the horrors of his past. Before his execution, Sellers spoke to the families of his victims, his voice filled with a mix of resignation and a plea for healing. "When you wake up in the morning, you won't feel any different. You'll hate me just as much as you did tonight. When you wake up and nothing has changed inside you, turn to God, and He will be there for you. Turn to God, and He will heal you. Let Him touch your hearts. Don't hate for the rest of your lives. I love you all." Born on March 26, 1972, Glenn Charles McGinnis faced significant challenges from an early age. His childhood was marked by domestic abuse, and by 17, he was already a repeat offender. On October 19, 1990, in Conroe, Texas, McGinnis entered a laundromat armed with a gun. What started as a robbery quickly escalated when he shot Gail Kimmel, a 30-year-old employee, leading to her painful death. After a brief escape, McGinnis was captured at his aunt's house, and despite his young age, he was tried as an adult. On January 25, 2000, in Huntsville, Texas, McGinnis was brought into the execution chamber. In a final act that highlighted the inhumanity of his situation, he declined a last meal and had no final words. At 12:17 a.m., the lethal injection ended his life. a stark reminder of how society often overlooks the personal stories of those condemned.
I mainly took care of, did a whole lot of taking care of seeing after my daughter, right?
On a sweltering June afternoon in 1995 in Dallas, Texas, 17-year-old Toronto Patterson's attempt to steal a BMW took a tragic turn. Instead of simply taking a car, Patterson ended the lives of 3 people: 25-year-old Kimberly Brewer and 2 innocent children, 3-year-old Ollie Brown and little Jennifer Brown. On August 28, 2002, the execution chamber in Texas became the final stage for Patterson. His last meal was a classic American comfort food, a plate of fried chicken, butter biscuits, white cake, and a soda. When asked for his final words, Patterson's remorseful confession echoed through the chamber. "I am sorry for the pain. I should be punished for the crime, but I don't think I should die for a crime I didn't commit." At 6:17 p.m., as he took his last breath, the nation was compelled to confront the question: can a society truly heal when its justice system is so unforgiving? In April 1994, 17-year-old Napoleon Beasley, along with his brothers Cedric and Donald Coleman, attempted to steal a Mercedes-Benz. Their target was no ordinary vehicle. It belonged to John Leake, a 63-year-old businessman and the father of a prominent federal judge. In a moment of reckless violence, Beasley fired his gun, killing John Leake right in front of his garage. When he tried to shoot Leake's wife, his gun jammed, sparing her life but sealing his own fate. Despite the efforts of human rights organizations and debates that reached the U.S. Supreme Court, Texas remained resolute. On May 28, 2002, Beasley entered the execution chamber. Notably, he declined a final meal, a silent act of protest. His last words, spoken with a sense of bitter reflection, were, "I am sorry for what's happening here tonight. Not just for me, but for what's happening to me. I'm disappointed that a system that is supposed to protect and uphold what is just and right can be so much like me when I made the same shameful mistake." At 6:17 p.m., Beasley was pronounced dead, leaving behind a legacy of questions about justice, accountability, and the possibility of redemption. Ruben Montoya, as recorded, was born on December 5, 1966 in San Antonio, Texas. In November 1984, during a robbery that resulted in the death of Pedro Gomez, the only surviving witness initially did not identify KTU as the shooter. However, after pressure from the police, the witness changed his story. Lacking fingerprints, DNA, or any physical evidence linking KTU to the crime, and relying solely on a dubious eyewitness account, the conviction was built on unstable foundations. Nevertheless, he was sentenced to death in 1985. On August 24, 1993, at 12:29 a.m., KTU was executed. In a final act of defiance, or perhaps acceptance, he declined a last meal and had no final words. Years later, one of the key witnesses would recant his testimony, raising the possibility that an innocent person had been executed. This case serves as a stark reminder of the irreversible consequences of judicial mistakes. On a sweltering night in Lafayette Parish, Louisiana, on July 2, 1977, 17-year-old Dalton Pran and 3 friends cruised the streets in an old Chevrolet with a broken taillight. Amid the hazy aftermath of a night out, with alcohol still coursing through his system, Pran's agitation triggered a series of events that would alter his life forever. When Sheriff Charles Douglas stopped them for a minor violation, Pran's temper flared. He pulled out a .38 revolver and fired 2 deadly shots, taking the officer's life before he and his friends fled the scene. Despite clear signs of his mental instability and a documented history of mental illness, all appeals were rejected. On May 18, 1990, Dalton Pran was escorted into the execution chamber at Louisiana State Penitentiary. He was allowed one final meal, a simple yet haunting choice of crispy fried chicken, golden French fries, and a can of soda. Pran's last words were heartfelt and poignant. Nothing is going to be achieved. I am at peace with myself. I would like to thank everyone who has supported me throughout all these years. I hope you all are happy, so I give up my life. I give my love to everyone. God bless." At 9:14 p.m., death urged through his body, ending the life of a man who, though condemned as a teenager, would have spent over a decade on death row.
I am innocent.
Halloween night, October 31st, 1981, in Amarillo, Texas, was a festive occasion for many, but for 17-year-old Johnny Frank Garrett, it marked the start of a tragic downfall. Garrett was arrested for the brutal murder of Sister Tadia Ben, a 76-year-old nun inside a convent. Despite a lack of physical evidence, a confession, later claimed to be coerced, sealed his fate. His trial was riddled with controversy, as human rights groups condemned what they saw as a miscarriage of justice. On February 11, 1992, as the door to the execution chamber closed behind him, Garrett's final meal was served. A simple dish of coconut-flavored ice cream, a stark contrast to the seriousness of his sentence. When asked for his last words, Garrett delivered a shocking statement. "I would like to thank my family for loving me and taking care of me. The rest of the world can kiss my ever-loving ass." At 6:10 p.m., the lethal injection coursed through his veins, and Johnny Frank Garrett was pronounced dead. Charles Rumbo was just 17 when his criminal record began, a record that would eventually lead him to commit robbery and murder. On April 4, 1975, Rumbo burst into a jewelry store in Amarillo, Texas, attempting a bold robbery. When Michael Farillo, the 58-year-old store owner, fought back, Rumbo shot him dead. The trial that followed was quick, and Rumbo became one of the youngest criminals in Texas history to receive a death sentence. On September 11, 1985, Rumbo was taken to the execution chamber. He declined a last meal, and when his final words were recorded, they were both introspective and firm. "All I can say is goodbye, and to the rest of you, although you may not forgive my transgressions, I forgive yours against me. I am ready to begin my journey, and that is all I have to say." At 12:22 a.m., he died, leaving behind questions about whether a life so young could ever truly be rehabilitated. Douglas Christopher Thomas, born on September 15, 1972, grew up in a small town in Virginia and fell deeply in love with Jessica Wisman, a love that would ultimately lead to tragedy. Forbidden by her parents, Thomas hatched a plan to eliminate their disapproval once and for all. On November 3, 1990, he sneaked into Jessica's family home armed with a shotgun. Under Jessica's chilling command to do it, finish it, Thomas entered the bedroom and fired the shot that killed her father, J.B. Wiseman, while her mother, Kathy, was seriously injured. Although Jessica avoided a death sentence and received only 7 years in prison due to her age, public outrage grew as Thomas faced a much harsher penalty. On January 10, 2000, Thomas was led into the execution chamber. His final meal, a plate of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and bread, served as a somber reminder of the life he once knew. Before his execution, Thomas expressed his bitterness. "It overwhelms me that Jessica only got 7 years and is free to resume her normal life while I'm 4 days away from paying the ultimate price for something we both participated in. But I don't think America should execute juvenile offenders because that basically means saying we have no chance at rehabilitation." At 9:06 p.m., the finality of his fate was sealed by lethal injection, a stark illustration of a system grappling with the balance between the hope for redemption and the demand for retribution. Each of these cases represents more than just a legal footnote. They are tragic glimpses into a judicial system that, for a time, believed that the irrevocable punishment of death was the only way to achieve justice, even when that justice was applied to individuals whose lives were still unfolding. The stark details of final meals and last words offer rare, humanizing insights into these condemned youths. Whether it was the comfort food chosen by a frightened teenager, the silence of one who refused a meal, or a final statement that blended regret with defiance, these moments resonate deeply. From the remorseful tone of Toronto Patterson to the defiant words of Johnny Frank Garrett, the final moments highlight ongoing debates about whether society can ever truly consider rehabilitation as an option. Advances in neuropsychology reveal that the adolescent brain is still developing. When a life that has not yet reached full maturity is taken, it raises important questions about fairness, accountability, and the essence of justice. Although the United States no longer executes individuals for crimes committed as minors, the legacy of these cases serves as a painful reminder of a troubling past. The lack of detailed personal accounts in many records, the missing final meals, the unspoken last words, reflects a broader issue. A system that often reduces the lives of its youngest inmates to mere statistics and legal arguments. Reform advocates contend that the final moments of these young offenders should prompt a re-evaluation of a justice system that can sometimes be both harsh and inhumane. They emphasize that while some condemned youths expressed remorse or defiance, others were denied even that small opportunity for personal expression. In cases like that of Ruben Montoya, where a retracted testimony years later hinted at a wrongful conviction, the human cost of irreversible punishment becomes even more difficult to bear. It is a legacy built not only on the irrevocable decisions of juries and judges, but also on the sorrowful echoes of lives that might have been different. For each final meal served or meal refused, for each final word spoken or left unuttered, there lingers the question: could the promise of rehabilitation have offered a different ending?